Hi, I'm Whitney Espick, the CEO of the MIT Alumni Association, and I hope you enjoy this digital production created for alumni and friends like you.
Hello, MIT alumni, and welcome. I am Joe McGonigal in the MIT Alumni Office, and I am pleased to welcome you all to the MIT Career Lunch and Learn webinar today. It's a resume workshop with recruiters. I'm calling in from Cambridge, Mass. on the banks of the Charles River at MIT, and delighted we've got so many alumni joining us today. Nearly 600 alumni from around the world patching in, and you sent nearly 600 alumni resumes for us to look at. We will not ask our panelists to look and comment on all of those today, but let me apologize well in advance if we don't get to yours. We will look at as many as we can. These companies that they represent, and they are, we have Skye Laskin, head of talent from FortressIQ. Skye, if you could raise your hand. Jay Weinstein, principal talent acquisition partner with IBM. Mohan Giridharadas, CEO and founder of LeanTaaS. These three companies represent and employ a good number of MIT alumni, so I'm really pleased that we can hear from them today, some insights on resumes. And we've got Q&A open. If you want to ask these panelists any questions, feel free to open the Q&A widget on your toolbar in Zoom, or you can ask questions in the YouTube comments field if you're watching on YouTube Live. We'll also have brief breakouts after the webcast with each of the three companies, so feel free to click on any of the three links. We'll populate them in the chat. You also got an email with them. You should have gotten an email this morning with those three breakout links, one for Fortress, one for IBM, and one for LeanTaaS. And those breakouts will start around 3:40, 3:45 Eastern time today. We'll open them up. You can also tweet your comments and questions using the hashtag MITAlum. So let's start. Just panelists, would you just introduce yourselves? Tell us where you are in your career, what you're currently working on, and maybe just a short headline about your role and your company. And if we can go in that order and start with Skye Laskin at FortressIQ.
Greetings, MIT alumni. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Skye Laskin. I have been building technology teams for a little over a decade now, and have worked on the agency side where I had a partner, and we had our own agency for a long time where we were working for VC companies for basically like small and seed, pre-seed companies, about 0 to 50 people, where they didn't really have any recruiting capacity. So got to build a lot of amazing companies when they're very small, returned to some of them later. I've had the pleasure and privilege of being with companies that double year over year or much more, including SolarCity and Tesla, where we were hiring 300 to 500 people a week, and I was responsible for hiring well over 100 engineers each year there. And at Tesla, currently I'm at FortressIQ. We are focused on the process discovery space, which is really the pre-phase of the RPA industry. We are very pleased to be partnered with Microsoft and their only partner for the automation of the Power Automate product that'll come out this year. And we've held and had a variety of other accolades, and we are in a lovely growth phase right now. We were 9 people at the beginning of this year, and we're a little over 60 coming into this year, beginning of last year, coming to this year. And we are going to probably grow to about 150, 200 by the end of the year. So a lot more growth to do, and it's what I do. I'm responsible for all of the hiring process from soup to nuts, and additionally, I am HR as well. So I get to play, wear many hats, as you should in a startup.
Thank you. Jay Weinstein, IBM.
Good afternoon on the East Coast. Thank you for having me. I'm a principal talent acquisition partner with IBM. I'm an attorney. I've been recruiting lawyers for the past 20 years. I've been with IBM for the past year. I've had my own recruiting shop tailored toward large international law firms, focusing on partners and groups. And coming over to IBM, I recruit lawyers globally. I've recently branched out to tax and also strategy roles. So I'm happy to be here. I've reviewed some of the sample resumes, and I'm ready to jump in and give some advice.
Thank you. Mohan Giridharadas, LeanTaaS.
Joe, thanks for having me. I'm Mohan Giridharadas. I'm the founder and CEO of LeanTaaS. LeanTaaS is a 10-year-old company in Silicon Valley with an office in North Carolina as well. Our focus is on using lean principles, crazy mathematics, data science, AI, and machine learning to unlock capacity in hospitals. We optimize the scheduling of chemotherapy, operating rooms, provider templates, beds, and so on. We work with 100 of the leading hospitals in the country, including Sloan Kettering, MD Anderson, Stanford, Duke, Emory, UPenn, etc. Prior to starting LeanTaaS 10 years ago, I was at McKinsey for 18 years, and I was the head of lean manufacturing and lean service operations in the US and in Asia.
Great. We'll get to some resumes very shortly here. Let me start with an opening question for our panelists, and although they might not weigh in on each resume, panelists, if you could each weigh in on this question. We've got experienced hires, many of them in the crowd today. When you leave MIT, obviously you have a great credential on your resume, whether you're an undergraduate, master's, PhD, you've got that plus another degree, maybe from another great university. You've got some great experiences at MIT or at other universities in the lab or in research opportunities. How do you optimize yourself and your resume for the most experienced positions? And let's talk about somebody 10 years out, say, or 5 to 10 years out. Any specific advice about formatting or approaching the resume when it comes to talking about a variety of experiences? I'm not talking about looking for the first job out of graduation. Don't think so much about the 22-year-old here, maybe out of undergraduate, but any specific advice or best practices you have for pitching your best self when it comes to displaying a variety of experiences? Can we go in maybe the same order for that question at least? Skye?
So what I think is very important for crafting your resume is making sure it's relevant to the job you're applying for. And I think that I get this a lot, especially I spend a lot of my time hiring PhDs and people who have that same sort of long career track of experience where they've done a lot, maybe they've done a few years or more after. And it's hard to fit that all into a succinct, readable fashion that anybody's going to be able to spend the time to get through. What I typically tell people is that it's okay to make your resume for that job. And I don't mean change or craft it too much, but highlight the things that you feel are very relevant, that if you were in an interview with these people, you'd want to speak to and speak about, that they would find interesting and relevant for the role. So sometimes I get a lot of people who cross over from biosciences and certain things and have the technical skills, but they won't highlight that sort of aspect. They'll highlight more of the molecular biology and the other sort of projects that they were doing. And I do want to not say that less is more, but crafting it to be very relative and relevant for the audience is definitely something which I recommend.
Jay?
Yeah, so I think it's really, really important when you're crafting a resume, not to look, but to be found. So of course, I'm talking from a large MNC perspective. And we use LinkedIn Recruiter primarily as our search engine. And we're looking for search terms in our search engine that's going to come up with active recruiters. So you should be, each applicant should work very hard on their LinkedIn profile. It should be consistent with their resume. And you should use buzzwords. So maybe you would start by finding the role that you really want and scanning that role and filtering that role for the buzzwords that they're looking for in their skills, and make sure, obviously you have to have those skills, but make sure if you're having it to augment your resume in such a way that those words are going to pop and they're going to pop out. So you want to be found. The other thing is, you want to gauge the market a little bit, and you want to, as Skye said, tailor your resume to the position you want, given the marketplace. I wouldn't reach too far in advance. Know where you are now, and get get the role that you're particularly well suited for now, because in this digital age, we have access to hundreds, if not thousands of resumes that we're looking through. And so you want to be perfectly attuned to where you are right now for your job. And then you can look 5 years down the road and plot accordingly. But you want your resume to be clean, to be easily readable. You don't want a lot of verbiage in there. You want the skills that you have to pop. You want your education to pop. You want your achievements to pop. And that's the advice I can give you.
Mohan, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the length of the resume really matters. And when a resume starts to become 3 and 4 and 5 pages long, it starts to feel like a phone book. And you just get glossed over very quickly at that point. So I'd say find a way to be in the 1 or at most 2 pages sort of a box. Now, if you've got a ton of experiences, try and stop at some reasonable horizon in the past. Nobody really cares what you did 18 years ago. So try and stay in the 5, 10, 12-year point, and experiences beyond that probably don't matter. And so you could start to work it out that way. Now, it's difficult to cherry pick and skip 3 or 4 intermediate jobs, because then you have gaps in your resume. And gaps in your resume are a bigger red flag than a bulky resume. So if you must drop, I would drop things that were 12 to 15 years in the past, list the most recent 12, and then have your education there. That way you create a cohesive picture, and you're not getting caught up about what you did 19 years ago.
Good, thank you. Go ahead.
One little quick thing to add about that is I also tend to feel that there's a lack of distinction between a CV and a resume these days. A resume should be exactly what Mohan mentioned, more of a brief insight, while the CV is, the document of your life achievements, role by role. And I have to just say one more thing. The buzzwords are great, as Jay said, but be very careful and aware of buzzword packing, or just putting it where it's just a soup of technology terms, because I have a lot of my hiring teams, they'll look at that and just be like, this is, too much. You can't be a master of all of that. Just because you worked on a team that used that one technology, if you can't speak to the nuts and bolts and the ins and outs of what's happening under there as a professional, don't list it. And make sure anything on there that if we're in the interview and we call you out on that word that you have on there, you better be able to speak to it, technically, proficiently, and effectively enough to have listed it.
Good, thank you. I will give extra points to panelists who disagree with one another today. I should have mentioned that up front. So Skye, thanks for jumping in, or panelists who ask one another tough questions too about their companies. Let me, within 15 minutes here of starting, get a resume in front of us, because that's what was promised today. And I'll also perhaps bore you with repeating myself to say this is the MIT Alumni Career Lunch and Learn webinar. If you joined us late, we're going to look at some resumes today. Then we're going to have some breakouts with our 3 company representatives from FortressIQ, LeanTaaS, and IBM. They are answering your questions today as well. Use the Q&A feature in Zoom or the comments feature in YouTube Live. And alumni, the chat is also open. If you want to message one another in there, feel free to as well. I am going to try to find my window where I have these resumes open. And again, we had several hundred resumes sent to us. I did my best to look for some variety and of backgrounds, format, content, etc., location, all of those demographics, and did some redacting too of personal information here. But if everybody can see it, here is a first resume in front of me. Panelists, just nod if you can see that. The things I would ask panelists to comment on when it comes to any of these resumes, please feel free to comment on the format of them, on any particular content questions you would have for this person, or any quick hits they can take back to the shop and revise or edit. But any other kind of philosophical approaches to resume writing, like Skye just said, the CV versus the resume, etc., comments you have, and feel free to pass on any of these as well. But let me just open the mic here to the three panelists and say, any particular comments on this first one? We won't use the person's name if possible, but this is a biochemist, relatively younger alum, recent grad. And they've started by telling us about major skills of theirs, a little summary at the top, core experience, additional experience, education. Page 2 goes to technical skills, professional development, awards, publications, talks, and interests at the very end. And I hope the scrolling is working for viewers. Panelists, any comments on this particular resume?
Yeah, I think it's very well organized. I like the resume. I like the highlighted, darkened area where she's trying to transition her academics with industry. I like it. You know, it's a nice organized resume. It's easy to get through. All the relevant information is there. There's not a lot of verbiage, excess verbiage.
On the first paragraph, even though it says, you know, that they want to apply their the biological knowledge and vast technical and bioinformatics skills, I don't see what they actually want to do as a role. Like, I want to be a software engineer. I want to be a data scientist doing this, or I want this sort of role. It's kind of that first line is a little lacking of specificity to me, where I think that, you know, that's a good place where you could customize for that role if you're applying for a generalist data science role or a you know, software engineer role or whatever you're going to try to do with those skills. I think that it could be enhanced where you could add something there to just kind of focus in on, you know, what does this person want to do? Because that's a very broad application of, well, I have technical skills and this knowledge and that knowledge. Okay, great. What do you want to do with it? Is, I think, something that, you know, would be good to get across. And on the very bottom, I know it sounds cheesy, but I can't tell you how many times you get to the end of an interview and those little hobbies or careers or interests, those little extra things on the bottom, they're worth their weight in gold. You know, sometimes even just saying, hey, I was on a soccer team, or I did this, or I did that. I know it seems cheesy, but that little extra personalizing and addition, I think, is always a nice thing for someone to add, you know, if they have some sort of interests that are, you know, something they can talk about and talk to. I agree with Jay on the organization seems pretty decent. I think it's, what is it? Is it 2 pages total? Was that right? You scroll to the bottom again?
Yes. It's
I would say just to add to that, agree with everything Skye's been saying. The technical depth on cell and molecular biology just screams out at this resume. So this person is, you know, obviously comes across as very, very deep in this material. I'm not a big fan of a section of skills because the self-assessment of the 3 skills you put may or may not be the skills I'm looking for. If I happen to be looking for leadership and collaboration, I look at it and say, okay, those are not even the things on this list. So I think you are making an assumption about your self-assessment of skills and how they would resonate to someone who's looking at them. And it's better not to take the bet. It's better to leave it blank and just list out all that you've done and then be able to adjust as you go in the process of the dialogue.
Should you say the words I am looking for in the summary statement? We often could have denuded the resume of all personal pronouns, but do you guys have a preference on having a personal statement with the word I in the summary statement, at least at the top?
Only if you are very clear that that's all you want to do. Because then if it becomes very easy for me to say, great, I'm glad you want to do that. I don't have a role for that next, right? So to the extent you are a little bit flexible, then you've got to hedge your bets a little bit.
Yeah, don't be over specific. And whatever you do, don't let it say he wants to do this or she wants to do that. The third person thing is not a good look. Just, you know, when it kind of like, did somebody else write this for you? Or why are you talking about yourself in third person? I'm not a huge fan of that. Can you scroll to the bottom? Is there like a technical skills list on the second page?
Yes.
I wanted to look at that.
I'm gonna disagree a little bit. I really like the skills aspect of this. This person has, very specific skills. I think that, either it's going to be a good fit or it's not. She wants to work and employ, her very deep biochemistry skills. The fact that somebody, is not specifically looking for that, well, maybe then it's not a good match. But I do agree that in the summary, which I always love, it would be helpful if she had an idea of what kinds of roles with what kinds of places might be a very, very good fit for her. For example, she may be looking at I want to work at a small molecule, biotech firm or something like that. And if that's, where she wants to be, then, and, she wants to attract biotech firms, then I think that's a good thing. Or if in fact, she may have multiple resumes where she's attacking, biotechs and large pharmaceuticals and maybe research labs in particular geographies, and she can have different resumes for each. I also love, by the way, and I agree with Skye, the interests. Some people cut those out, but I think they're great talking points. And they're also, crafting and sewing. I know it sounds weird, but, these are very, skills-oriented, detail-oriented kinds of things. Long distance running, well, that shows a great deal of perseverance and stamina. And it's nice to know that somebody has interests outside of their work. Sort of rounds out the individual.
It humanizes the resume.
Yes, and for that reason, there are resumes, and maybe people will disagree. I actually like people who add photographs on their resume because it humanizes the resume. It's not necessary, but I think it just helps.
I did do some redacting of photographs from these. But
well,
good.
If I had my choice, I would strip all information away to remove as much bias as possible, but that's just not going to happen, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
On to a next one. We have R&D engineer here. This is probably somebody roughly in the same age range as the last one, but 10 years into academic credentials here, career, and a one-pager. This is a one-page resume. So it's professional profile at the top, skills, education, professional experience. Panelists, can you see this? And any impressions?
I think that the top does speak directly to, where they want to be, and it gives them a wide enough area to, be like, hey, I'm kind of on the cusp of hardware and software engineering. I can work on both sides. I like how it just jumps right into, hey, here's my skills. Here's what I can play with, the hardware, the software, languages. The one thing that is always a question when I see these in progress is it says in progress, remote, part-time. So is he looking for a full-time role? Is he looking for an internship? Can they do that? Typically, I would guess somebody who already has a PhD and is doing that as just kind of an additional degree would be able to do that. But that's just one thing I always get questions on when I, do bring resumes like this up the ladder. Sometimes like, hey, are they even able to do this full time? So that's always one thing that, I don't know how you can really speak to it so directly. Basically, just looking for a full time role. It says currently seeking roles. I think a tiny bit there just to, speak to that wouldn't be a bad thing.
I think this is a very well laid out resume because it's quite tight. It fits on one page. The credentials are obviously compelling. Master's from MIT, a PhD from Switzerland. I think the Georgia Tech reference is needlessly putting a baseball bat out there with which you'll get beaten. For one, it's a part-time thing after a PhD. Secondly, it's the one where the academic performance is wildly different from the others. a 3.91 GPA, a 5.0 GPA, and suddenly a 3 out of 4, it starts to look like there wasn't a lot of time or not a lot of attention paid to it. It's a needless baseball bat. So I would remove it and put it as a indicator of initiative taking that, hey, I took it upon myself to sign up for classes at Georgia Tech to get good at computer science, rather than putting it like a real degree with an academic performance that's wildly different from the other two.
I really like the resume, and I think it's laid out really well. I like how clean it is. I like how I can find the skill set really readily. I took roles to mean just jobs, full-time jobs. I mean, the person is at a full-time job right now. I assume he or she is looking for a full-time job. I don't think he's looking for a consultant gig. It doesn't bother me about the Georgia Tech thing. I think recruiters and hiring managers would understand what's going on here. I mean, they look at the rest of the resume, and they're working now, and they've taken some remote part-time online stuff, and they're trying to bone up on computer science. I actually think it shows that they want to go into an area that they think will add to their toolbox in computer science, and it's a lifetime of learning. And I would say this to everybody out there, that you should always be boning up on your skills. I have classmates of mine from high school that have told me at alumni functions that they're high-end degrees 20 years ago, and they're now just sort of, people managers, and they haven't kept up with the tech development. But so I think it's nice that he's actually going back and, not going back. His PhD was just in 2016, but actually adding to his skill set.
I'm more on Mohan's side of the fence here than Jay's. I think that it's, and when you're going through hundreds and thousands of resumes, it's a needless addition that could potentially get you overlooked. I do think it should be listed as additional education or continuing education, as to be like, like what Jay said, like I'm keeping up, I'm taking classes, I love when people say, hey, and I have this Coursera and this, additional Stanford certification and this one that I'm in process with. That's fine, but I think it just doesn't belong right there on the very top line of education. It does pale in comparison to the other ones. But additionally, I really like how succinct and clean what they did at their jobs are. It says it's very clear, easy to understand what they did, what technology they were using. A lot of times that can get really big and make these long resumes. I think that they did a really good job there. That's the only other two things I had to say.
Incision there. Third one, class of 2008. Here's a personal pronoun. I'm MIT, class of 2008. It starts with name and address above, redacted. Competencies, employment history, and education at the bottom. Another one-pager. Mohan, you would like that. And yep. Some concision here, but some narrative too under the current job or the most recent job, right? We've got a 3-paragraph narrative. Curious what you think of that. And how about even the narrative under education? I graduated with a bachelor in science, with etc. Any first takes here, panelists?
I'm not a big fan of the narrative style. I think it's cumbersome and distracting and too much verbiage. It's not emphasizing what you need to sort of emphasize. It's more like a combination between a cover letter and a resume, and I'm not a big fan. I'm sorry to say. Nice experience, but I wouldn't choose to present it in this way.
I agree. I don't like the organization. I can't take that there's 3 I started sentences right off the bat. I'm, I've, I'm. It just doesn't scream well. And I'm MIT, class of 2008. For some reason, I don't even think that's proper Englishing. Of course, Englishing isn't a word, but it doesn't read well. And I think that the skills are great, but that first three paragraphs, it's like somebody just trying to cut a chunk out of the job description and, you know, reword it a little bit and just slapped it in there. And so it doesn't really, it's like, did you do that? That's probably what your whole team did. Like, what have you done? What were you specifically involved in? You know, what technologies were you solving what problems with? It's a lot of words, but it doesn't tell me enough about what this person actually did. It's probably more like what that whole group was involved with.
I agree with that. I think the I is overblown. It feels very self-centered. Looking for a job in the hills of Seattle feels like I want to optimize for myself. I want to live in a place with a good view and walk to work. And so the world owes me a living in the hills of Seattle versus a job in the Pacific Northwest. I also think that a sudden thing like Insight Squared has a 6-month thing. There's a story there, right? After a 3-year stint, suddenly a 6-month thing and another 4-year stint. That smacks to me of something went wrong somewhere. And so there's a strategic choice to either drop it out completely and have 2011 to 2014 Harvard Data Warehouse, 2015 to 2019 Evercode, and let that go away, or just navigate through that a little bit, because the notion of a very strong I profile with all the team attributes being I did this, I did that, which is what the team did, is going to lead people to come in there and say, what exactly happened in the middle of that? So this thing sets off a little bit of a red flag set of things for me.
Thank you.
I just wanted to jump in because, you know, this is a good segue. So for many resumes that I see, undoubtedly there will be something like the I squared kind of thing where somebody has a short stint. You know, 6 months is really short. Years is short. You know, there obviously is a story there, but I would leave it in. So you're going to be prepared with an explanation for what happened. And you know, if you get as far as being, you know, screened by a recruiter and hopefully a hiring manager, I mean, the recruiters and the hiring managers understand that life happens. And, you know, there may be a story, there may be a very good explanation. I mean, the other stints, you know, there's 4 years at Harvard Data Warehouse and 4 years at EverQuote. So it's sort of sandwiched in there with longer stints. And I don't think it's going to hurt you too badly. You know, for whatever the reason is, you know, I would just be, I would always, you know, I think the whole would leave more questions than actually the short stint. So I would be prepared with an explanation, but I would always, you know, come clean on a resume with exactly what transpired and never really try to bury anything.
I would say also that if it was a contract, listed as a contract, be like, hey, this was just a 6-month contract. Okay, people get contracts, we understand that. The other side of that is from December 14th to February 15th, that's, you know, 3 months. Typically, people don't take that long of a time off or in between jobs unless there was potentially a reason or something happened. So I would maybe not speak to it, but definitely be ready to speak to it if you did get into the conversation, because that's something that stood out to me too. It's like, okay, so you did this really short job for 6 months and then you didn't get another job for 3 months. Like, what was going on? You know, was that there's probably a story there. Make sure you're able to speak to it in a professional manner.
Thank you. I've got a mechanical design engineer here, needs some feedback on his resume. A weighty summary at the top, and then centered headings, core strengths with some keywords, professional overview, very standard bulleted lists of each position, 3 education credentials below. I've got organizations, leadership in organizations, technical skills, languages, research experience, and project experience. Some within those companies, some without. What strikes you here, panelists?
The 2-page format is very nice because the back page has got more details. The first page communicates the highlights. So that's very good. The internships are very clearly called out, so the 3-month stints become more of a learning experience rather than a short bounce. There's a good solid continuity around Milwaukee tool, which feels solid. The paragraph at the front end is at the top is great as well. So I think this is really well laid out.
The only thing that stands out to me is I think that the last sentence on the second paragraph, last sentence, career supported by a master's science, and then the GPA, you could just have that GPA listed on your education part and eliminate that. It has just a bit of redundancy to call it out a second time. That's the only thing that's really standing out to me. Other than that, it looks pretty good. I always seem to notice that people tend to list more about their most recent role than their other roles. And I'm not sure if I really like that as much, but that is something that's, you can just see in the pure number of bullets, how much more meat there is in this, from September than either of the internships, which is fine. An internship, you're not going to do as much, but if those were real jobs, I would expect them to have a little more meat to the, or more balance between how many bullets or how many parts of reference you do for each, employment, stint you did.
Good, and one fifth one here. This is a little bit more in the health science domain than tech. And it's a person with a PhD from MIT in health science technology. Relatively recently, again, this is in the 5 to 10 years out of experience. I've got a very weighty summary again, a nice list of skills, educational background, achievements, professional experience, and onto a third page with publications and patents. What do we think?
This was one of my favorite resumes of the sample resumes you gave. I love the way it's laid out. I like, it's very, very clean and it's easy to read. It's easy on the eyes to glance down and know what this person does. I like the summary. I like even the page break. And I like that she wasn't afraid of providing the detail on the second page if you were to get that far, and as well as the publications. So I think this is a very thoughtful, well laid out resume.
I have to disagree with Jay on just the page break part. That really bothers me that it says professional experience and then the next page has that there, but then there's a little blurb onto a third page. It'd be one thing if you're like, okay, if I take out those two, extra spaces, I can get it all into 2 pages, but they're not trying, they obviously didn't keep it on 2 pages, move professional experience down to that next top. But again, it might just be a personal thing but it wouldn't change the way it ends, but I think it would be, it's always weird to have like something listed and then no more information and then, jump to another page.
We've got wide margins here too, I think, trying to do some fitting.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you with that. Aside from that one page thing, if she had found a way, I mean, it's weird not to have like your most recent professional experience on the first page. So if she could have found a way to sort of get that professional experience and give a little bit more on that first page, there's a very large bottom margin there. She seems to have a lot of room in order to get that done. And then maybe she wouldn't have to bleed into the third page. But aside from that, I like it. So I agree with you, Skye.
I think they could have put achievements probably below professional experience to get it to read like Jay was saying, or played with some of the locations of some of the information. And that was one of the questions I think that we got on the chat as well was, how soon should you list job experience? And I like to see it on the first page. I like to see what you're currently doing and be able to start to go there. A lot of times I'll read resumes backwards too, or LinkedIn profiles, I always read backwards from the bottom up, just because, I want to see like where it started and kind of how it went. But I like to see on that first page, what you're doing. So I think if you have all words and no like content, sometimes that can be a bit less desirable.
Mohan, anything to add?
No, I agree. I think the achievements moving later would be better. I think experience coming ahead of education will probably also be better because it's more recent and relevant. The PhD was in 2013. The professional experience is 16 to 19, which is more current. So I'd always lead with what's current. If you're a fresh graduate, having education at the top is the thing. If you graduated 5 or 6 years ago and you're looking for your next role based on what you've accomplished in this role, having the experience be at the top is probably more relevant.
Alumni tuning in, we do have breakouts with each of these panelists starting in just a few minutes here. Please use the links that you were sent, and they are also populated in the chat window if you want to join those breakouts. But before we get to that, I did send the panelists another dozen resumes or so that just caught my eye for one reason or another. And let me just briefly scroll through those in a rapid fire round here, panelists. And maybe it's a super rapid fire round, and I'll say, is there any of these dozen that you just have a burning desire to talk about, or
the one you just went through? Go, if you back up to, I want to interview that person. So,
that one there.
No, one more. Yep, that's the one.
Okay, good. So
call me.
Winning resume. Any others from these dozen, either best practices or foibles?
The one that had the block bullet points that you just went to. No, the one, I think it was 2 after the one that Mohan liked.
If you go back one page, Joe.
This one, yeah, this one I didn't, I thought that scroll down, I thought this was really, could have been much more organized in a better fashion. The highlights are great and all, but again, I get it, this person's done a lot, but kind of to what Mohan last said, like lead with what you're currently doing. Don't give me the whole, story of your life. And also it's so big and open. I think that they could have really done a better job formatting. I feel like it's just kind of overexpanded per se.
I'll look at the last.
You see how long it took us to get to the appointments? Like it's what the 3rd page is where you finally figure out what they're currently doing. That's, most people won't make it that far.
And in the last minute here, a couple of questions that at least got a couple of votes. What about breaks in service? Any particular best practices you love there? Sorry, breaks in, gaps off, time off for travel or family. Is there any clever ways you've seen to do that? Any clever approaches to, having a couple years of consulting work in between jobs listed in any kind of more than conventional way?
Make sure you do say it's consulting work, especially if there's like five different companies over 2 years. Make sure it's very clear that it was contract or consulting. And anytime you do take a break, breaks are fine. That makes sense. I see people say I did a sabbatical and traveled through East India for 4 months, or traveled the world. Put that in there. Explain it there, and you can say, "Oh, cool, you took a sabbatical. Like, what was that? What was that? Okay, well, maybe your company sold and was acquired, and you wanted to take a break. Okay, fine. Or, maybe you just needed to do it. List it, speak something to it, because last thing you want them to do is have that question without an answer, or at least like some context. Put, sabbatical, traveled abroad, or personal projects, did a startup with a friend, or whatever it is. I would definitely, speak to any sort of gaps or any sort of like travel.
I completely agree with that. And, don't hide nothing. So don't hide anything and explain. And gaps are a major question mark, but traveling, consulting gigs, changing over jobs, taking some time between jobs, doing some daddy or mommy time, that's all appropriate, and it's all, personal choices, and it's okay. So, when you hide it, you left people to wonder, and the mind goes to the negative. So if you explain it and you say, I took some times between my jobs, or I took off some time to travel with my family, or I had an ailing parent that I had to set up, over the course of a summer while I was working part-time. Isn't it great that my employer gave me some flexibility, or whatever it is, but don't leave, the mind to wonder why that gap is where it is, and why, because they're going to assume the worst unless you explain why.
I'd agree. As long as you've got a good story around it and you can defend it and explain it, you should have it. Have it out there and be prepared to address it.
Good. Well, we're flat out of time, overtime, and many thanks to our three panelists. We've got Jay Weinstein from IBM, Skye Laskin from FortressIQ, Mohan Giridharadas from LeanTaaS, have donated some generous time here today and disagreed with each other plenty, and that was some of my favorite parts. Alumni who are tuning in, we thank you for tuning in, asking some good questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody's resumes today. We do have some breakouts for you now set up, one per company. The links are in the webinar chat. Please feel free to meander over there and give our panelists a minute or two to get there as well. You can continue the conversation in the webinar chat if you wish. You can continue it online on Twitter with #MITalum. Need more resources for your resume? Visit alum.mit.edu/careers. Join us on our YouTube channel within a week's time, and you can watch an archived version of this webinar as well. Please sign up for future webinars at that web address as well. Join the Alumni Advisors Hub, come to some of our regional hiring events, and reach out to us at alumnicareers@mit.edu with questions. So thanks again to our panelists, and let's run off and join some breakouts now. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for joining us. And for more information on how to connect with the MIT Alumni Association, please visit our website.